Hello, everyone. I hope you are having a good day or night. My name is Chenge, and I am wishing you the warmest welcome to A New Perspective, podcast that talks about gender based violence. Today, we'll be joined by Martina to address a very sensitive yet widespread issue: intimate partner violence.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Let's start by defining today's theme. Intimate partner violence refers to behaviors by a current or former partner that can cause physical, sexual, or psychological harm, including physical aggression, sexual coercion, emotional abuse, and controlling behaviors. It's one of the most common forms of violence experienced by women worldwide. Domestic violence, more broadly, happens in the private sphere between people connected by blood or intimacy. It can also include child or elder abuse. Now, Martina, do you recall the main types of domestic violence?
Yes, I will give you a brief explanation. And it's also important to remember that not all forms of violence leave visible marks. There's physical violence, like slapping, hitting, or choking, sexual violence when one partner forces or pressures the other into sexual activity without consent, psychological or emotional violence, which involves intimidation, humiliation, threats, or isolation, tactics that create fear and control. And finally, economic violence, when one partner controls all the finances, forbids work or study, and limits access to money. All these forms have one common goal: to dominate and control.
What are some clear signs of domestic violence, and how can we distinguish them from a healthy relationship?
Well, there are many warning signs, and they often start long before physical violence appears. An abusive partner may monitor where you are, who you are with, or prevent you from seeing friends or family. For example, they might demand access to your phone or passwords, control how you spend money, or dictate what you wear or eat. Emotional abuse can include insults, humiliation, or destroying belongings. Often they have unpredictable tempers, making you feel like you're walking on eggshells. And of course, there can be physical and or sexual violence, as well as threats of harm or exposure if you resist or try to leave. In short, these patterns are about power and control, not love. In a healthy relationship, you feel respected and free. In an abusive one, you feel watched and afraid.
What do you think? Why do some people remain in these kinds of relationships?
Well, what a good question. That's one of the hardest ones. And yeah, I would say that living isn't simple. It's often the most dangerous moment when violence can escalate. Some stay because of fear, others because of emotional ties, the cycle of violence where apologies and promises of change bring hope. There's also trauma bonding where fear and affection become deeply intertwined. Many victims can face shame, guilt, or low self esteem, believing the abuse is their fault. Then there are practical barriers also. For example, financial dependence, fear of losing custody, or having nowhere to go. Abusers often isolate their victims, cutting off support systems, and cultural pressures, like the idea that one must keep the family together, can make living even harder. So rather than asking, why don't they leave? We should ask, what's keeping them from leaving? Because breaking free requires courage and real emotional, social, and financial support.
How can someone begin to break free from these patterns?
Well, mm, breaking free isn't easy, but it's possible. And it starts with one key idea: you are not alone. The first step is awareness, recognizing that what's happening is abuse and that is not your fault. Then, safety planning, of course, identifying a safe place to go, setting aside important documents, and knowing who to contact. In Italy, for example, there is the 1522 helpline, and every country has local services that offer confidential support. Then, rebuilding a support network is crucial. Friends, relatives, or support groups that remind you what you are outside of that relationship. Therapy and counseling help heal the emotional wounds and rebuild confidence. For many, economic independence, even small steps like saving money more privately, is a path toward freedom. And don't forget digital safety, changing passwords, clearing browser history, and using secure devices. Living is not the end, it's the beginning of healing and reclaiming your life. No one deserves to live in fear.
And how can family or friends best support someone who is experiencing domestic violence?
This is another good question. Very difficult to answer, actually. But supporting a victim requires patience, empathy, and safety. Stay in touch, but be careful not to make the abuser suspicious. Sometimes you can create code words or use discreet messages to communicate safely. Always ask your friend how they prefer to connect calls, texts, or specific apps, depending on what feels safest. Listen and believe them without judgment. Respect their privacy and never act without their consent unless there is immediate danger. Offer practical help, a place to stay, transportation, or connection to professional services. Encourage them to reach out to helplines, like, as I said before, the 1522 in Italy, or other global resources, such as the No More directory or the Legal Helpline. Remember, form means empowerment, not control. So you have to help them make their own choices, but safely.
And now, for our last question, I would like to ask you what about the perpetrators of violence? Can they become aware of their behavior and change their behaviors?
Thank you for this question. It's a very complex issue, but I mean, it's like seeing this issue from the other point of view. And I would say that most perpetrators don't start out violent, but their actions often stem from deep emotional issues, learned behaviors, or the need for control. This never excuses the abuse, but it helps us understand that violence is learned and also can be unlearned. The first step toward change is awareness and accountability. They must recognize the harm they have caused and take full responsibility. Therapy and re-educational programs can help them understand the roots of their behavior, manage emotions, and learn nonviolent communication. Change is possible, but only for those willing to face the truth and do the hard emotional work. And in the long term, education and prevention are essential, teaching empathy, equality, and emotional intelligence, especially to boys and young men, to stop violence before it begins.
What an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for listening. And a special thanks to our guest, Martina, for helping us dive deeper into this important issue.
Thank you to you for inviting me and to give me the possibility to express myself in this very important and deep issue.
Thank you for being here. Now, in our next episode, we will explore new forms of violence, ranging from digital abuse to cyber violence. We will talk about cyber stalking, revenge porn, and online harassment, and their impact on adolescents, young women, and public figures. We'll also discuss the EU Directive 2024 and the new measures designed to fight them. And as always, thank you for listening and stay tuned and join us next time on A New Perspective.